If you're going to take on this project, I highly encourage you to watch the entire series, or not series, I guess, watch all of the video all the way to the very end and make sure that you have the ability to see all the mistakes I overcame, hurdles that you might have to work through. There's a lot of important things in there. So I encourage you to watch the entire video before you purchase any materials and make any decisions on anything. With that, let's get to work. So here's where the more challenging aspect comes in. It's the inlay. So obviously if you're doing plywood, you're not going to be able to do this, or at least I don't think you can. I haven't tried it. If you got some kind of inlay that you want to go in there, I can only think of plywood chipping and smacking. You definitely aren't going to chisel it. That's basically what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to be chiseling out a small little area for this to be seated into. If you're doing the planks and you've chosen to do an inlay, I don't know what kind of inlay you've chosen. I'll try to find the link where I had this. This was handmade, but it was cheap. It was on Amazon. I want to say it was like $20, but I'll price it out for you and provide you the link as well. But this here, so the wood here is basically, it's just basically a 3/4 of an inch. And I know that this here, the thickness of this here is 2 1/8. So it's gonna sit out proud. And I already knew that before I started, which is fine. So it comes down to how far down into the wood will this actually seat. So the crossbones, this one here actually seats a little bit further down than this one here. So this is going to be the main one that touches. So I'm going to have to be really strategic on how I approach this to make sure that I do get this portion touching the length here, and here it's actually contacting wood because I'm going to epoxy it in. And then I also want these two bones touching wood. So obviously this channel here is going to be deeper than this channel here. Here's another tricky part. This here, these bones are about 1/2 inch thick. And like I just said, this here is only 3/4. I don't want to go down 1/2 inch. I don't want to leave 1/4 inch material. It's just, I don't want to play that kind of game. So I'm going to leave at least a 16th more. So that means that this is probably going to sit proud as well. So the majority of this will be sitting proud of the surface of the wood. And that's fine. It's a strong piece. It's good. It's a 2-year-old, and he'll have it for many years, but I don't see, unless he's taking a screwdriver, chisel, or pry bar to it, it should last fine. So it'll definitely be unique when it's done. However you do yours, if you're doing an inlay, this is where I'll go ahead and try to guide you through it. This will be a learning process for both of us. I have done inlays before. If you've seen my mom's urn, this is obviously a much more of a grand scale and a little bit more complex than I had anticipated. And I don't want to shave this down. It's just not worth it. I could end up breaking it. I think I'll be fine. Anyways, let's get on to trying to get this marked up and start chiseling. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to find the center of the panel. So I'm just going to mark this here. I know where that's at now. And I know that I'm going to want this, probably, do I want the very center of this, which is probably right here somewhere, or do I want it where the bones are? If I put it where the bones are, that is about right there. And if I look at that from a distance, just use your eyes, and it looks about right to me. That looks pretty good. So that's a good sign. So now I can just go ahead and draw the outline of my inlay. So we put down some painter's tape, and you can see that there's lines that go around where the bones are, and I've intentionally oversized those. That's fine. It'll just be a cleaner pocket. It won't be so conforming. It'll be too tight if I don't. So the next step will be to take the knife and I like what I'm seeing here. We got a good pattern. So What's next is to just remove this blue tape here. Sharpen your chisels because you're going to need them. I'll show you how I am going to go ahead and try to remove this material. I'll be using a drill to remove most of the material. If you don't have that, you can still use a chisel, or if you prefer to use a chisel. So, but the main thing is we need to remove a lot of material now, but strategically. So again, if you're choosing to use this as your inlay, or if you're doing any kind of different inlay, I understand that this is going to be particular specific to this one here, but the techniques that I use, I'm hoping it'll work. And if they do, well then those would be obviously ones you could use too to be successful. So I'm going to press on with going ahead and cutting this out. So I've chosen 3 chisels. I'll show you what I'm going to do here, at least starting out with the more difficult part as far as the rounding of it. At least this worked for me when I was doing my diamond pattern. So as you see, I made the cuts rather deep, which is good. I'm going to need that. So I'm going to actually, let's start out with 3/8 here. If I can get the guard off. And I'm not going to go real deep or real hard. I'm just going to just lightly press where those cuts were. And I just wanted to remove that material. I don't want it to remove anything else. So again, nice and light. I just want to get these establish this area around the side. So I'm going to get this here done. Okay. Let's see if we can clean some of that up. Very gently. Just like that. Very gently. And you can see we're actually making a pretty decent curve there, so I like that. Make sure, by the way, that you do anchor down your work here. I forgot to mention that. Now, depending upon which way the grain is running with you, obviously the grain is running this direction, right? So depending upon how you're chiseling, you're going to be removing more material if you don't take your time and do it carefully. Like that, that's good. So now we should be safer to remove a little bit further back. That's a lot of material. I probably shouldn't be cutting off that material as much. So you would still want to go light here to establish that wall. We want this wall right here to be nice and strong. And so if I remove too much material, I'm going to end up possibly tearing out the side of that wall, and I definitely don't want to do that. Orient your wood as you need it. Move it around to make it easier for you to gain access. Don't be trying to go in weird angles where you're going to be uncomfortable, because you're just going to most likely make a mistake. So take your time and just make sure that you have your wood positioned where you need it to be. So I've moved on to going to remove the material with using a Forstner bit. Here's where I started with the chisel, and then obviously using the Forstner bit, making sure that I stay inside the lines. I don't want to get too close to the actual edge. That one's really close. So I'll try to stay away from the lines as much as possible. This one here is literally, see, you got a good gap there. You got about 1/8 of an inch. That's the way you kind of want it, because I'm going to end up breaking all those walls out. You'll run into knots here and there. The big thing is to make sure, for me for instance, I don't go too far in depth. These are basically, I think they're about 15/16 wide. I don't want to go that deep entirely. 15/16, 5/16 wide. And so ideally, this dimension right here from the I guess I'm not familiar with the nomenclature of the bit, but from here to here, that is ideal. That's right for me. It's 5/16 that leaves me realistically about 6/16 of a lip down there. So going to the top of the head of this is ideal. So that would be about the right depth. That will be able to allow me to capture both this bone here that'll be deeper inset and still get part of this. So I'm going to continue to remove material using the Forstner bit. You could use a regular drill bit as well. Just make sure that you mark your depth if you choose to do that. I'm making sure that both walls don't extend beyond that, and then I actually get into that one there maybe just a little bit. Forstner bit, you want to give them a chance to breathe here and there because they get hot real quick, and then if they get hot, then they just get dull real quick. Just like that. All right, we've removed a good chunk of the material using the Forstner bit. Successful, I believe. I think I stayed within my lines, so that's a good thing. So now it's moving on to just removing the rest of the material, and you can probably use like a good 1-inch chisel for the majority of it, just like that. Just come right out. Most of it, stay away from your line as much as possible. I should be having my safety glasses on when I'm doing this, but anyway, so we'll just continue to remove that. We'll remove most of this inner material, staying away from the lines as possible, as long as possible, until we get all this other material removed. Whenever you're doing this, don't twist the chisel, and you don't need to remove a ton of material at a time. It depends upon the type of wood you're using. Again, I'm using ambrosia. I'm using aromatic cedar, so it's a very forgiving and very easy material to work with. If you're working with something like walnut, it's a wonderful material to work with too, but it isn't as forgiving, and you may end up breaking some material out. So take your time, remove little material. You should not be chiseling with your mallet. This should be something you'll be able to just basically be paring down and removing material. I'll zoom in and show you real quick. Again, staying away from the line as much as possible. So I'll just take these two out real quick. There's 1 and 2, just like that. And we'll continue to chisel away at this, getting closer and closer to it. The closer and closer it gets, the more difficult it's going to be to remove, because you've got more material now than you had in just the tips. And so, like I said, don't angle your chisel. So we have the majority of those removed. I'm going to go ahead and press on with coming up to my knife wall. There's still some points here, I can get rid of those, but I will use the mallet for the remainder of this. So I just wanted to, I know I just told you not to do that. I did find this technique, if you hold it like this and you kind of slice down, it seems to work pretty well. Okay, so let's press on. So I'm going to sneak up on my knife wall. I'm not going to take off a ton of the material just yet. I'm just going to get snug to close to it. I'm only going to the bottom here, so it kind of stops on its own, so it's not bad. Get rid of this. And I could come all the way up to the knife wall now, but I'm afraid of it still pushing out, so I'm going to try to have that. And I missed a good portion of that. I'll take it out with that. Just a paring effect. So now I'm going to go into that knife wall. Go straight down. And that's it. It's that simple. One more here. And I got enough there. I can remove that. Or I feel good enough about removing it, I should say. Just like that. Now we'll finish up the rest of this. When I get to the rounded corner type things, I'm going to break off into using the, where is it? The 1/4 inch one, and I'll come back to that one when I get there. All right, so now I'm switching over to the 1/4 inch. Again, make sure that your chisels are very sharp. So you probably could still, I could probably still get away with 3/8, but I would rather just stay with this. Oh, that's a broom. I'd rather just go ahead and use this around these corners. Now I've got a real corner turn coming here, or a real sharp turn coming here actually. And if I put the chisel all the way in there, I'm going to dig into the outline pattern. I don't want to do that. So I'm only going to use probably about half of this blade here to remove this next little piece. And then we can come around a little bit more. There we go. Probably actually pair that now. Yeah. I'm gonna have to clean up this bottom a little bit, but as far as the walls go, establishing the walls, I like what I'm seeing. We don't need anything perfect, so yeah, I think that looks all right. We'll end up sanding this out a little bit, run those over, but so yeah, so we'll continue to do the other ones as well. So I'm not worried about the tips from the Forstner bits. The bones are going to cover those up. I'm not really worried about the round parts either. So what we do want to do is we do want to get rid of these higher surfaces. And if you have use a really sharp chisel, unless you happen to have a router plane, and you can just shave this up. Just make sure that you use the beveled side down and go at a decent angle, and you can clean this up. So we got a couple things going on here. First and foremost, the dry fit. So I can see that I'm close. I've got a little bit of interference here. I'm sticking out there and there. What I'm actually hoping is that it's hidden underneath the centerpiece. I removed a little bit of material here, but I might have to remove a little bit more in order to try to get that to fit just right. But I can see right here, this probably isn't going to, so I might have to widen that out. I shouldn't say I might, most likely I'm gonna have to widen that out, and I am gonna have to extend this out. But I have a bigger problem. I'm gonna bring you in here for a second, but there's a knot right here. And where this knot is, it created this crack that goes all the way across, and it's starting to separate the wood. I'll show you in a second. This is what I'm talking about right here. So let's see here if I can clamp this a little bit. And there you go, you can see that separation, that crack runs all the way along through here, through that knot, comes out and goes around here. Now, I'm comfortable that I can fix it. It's going to take some wood glue, obviously. I don't want the crack. Who wants the crack? And in the end, it will still be secured with angle brackets on the inside and screws on the outside. So I'm really not worried about structural integrity or it splitting and continuing to, propagate. That's the word I'm looking for. But I don't want to fix it just yet. I want to make sure that the skull and bones fits in here the way that it should. Somewhere in my taping and outlining, I'm off. But it's not drastic. It's not super terrible. I have one that fits very well, and it's oriented the way that I like it. So I need to take off a little bit here, a little bit here, and a little bit around the top part of the bone. So I've outlined that by freehand. I've taken a knife and I've cut that. I'm just going to have to remove that material now. So this is where woodworking can go wrong, even though your intentions are the greatest. So I've been trying to, as I just showed you, trying to fit this in. So I was like, oh, I'll have to remove some material here, here, and here. Well, I wasn't off on my tracing originally. During the removing of the material, I oriented the board this way. And lo and behold, it fits the way it's supposed to. I've already started removing material, so I'll have to try to even it out. But it fits in there very nice. It'll glue in there really nice. Unfortunately, yeah, I'm gonna have to try to round this off and round that off and round this off in order to try to make it look right. That's what happens. I think we're finally there. All in all, looks pretty good. The outline, you can still see where, yeah, this is where I was gonna take even more material out there. So rounding these off, I'm gonna file these rough, jagged pieces here. I'll file those and sand those. I do want to sand a little bit more. I will be sanding this before I glue this in place. I will sand it to the final. I'll probably go 180. But now we need to go to getting that crack taken care of. This crack right here that runs all the way through. I need to get that done. So I am going to have to be clever about that. Yeah, so that's next. So I was going to shim it in order to try to bend it to give me some room to put some glue in here. But you can see as soon as I lifted it up, actually, it split. So that gives me the opportunity now. So I will go ahead and get glue through that entire seam that's split there. And I'll glue it up. So I won't bore you with that, but when we come back, you'll be able to see where I'm at on the sanding, and then going from there, it's kind of basically building the box. Very nice. We've went ahead and sanded this to 150 grit. That's as far as I'm going to go. It's very nice finish, feels good. Took care of all the little nicks and whatnot. Sanded out the rounded corners, got rid of all the chunkiness, if you will. And then also glued in a couple spacers with epoxy just to help level this so that it doesn't rock. So we have a good fit once we go ahead and glue that down. Now we're on to the next step, and to do that we're going to need to cut a little tool for ourselves. So I'm going to cut something. I'm going to cut just this chunk piece of pine the same width, so 16 inches, as our end panels, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that. Now we're doing our dry setup, if you will. What I want to do is I want to make sure that everything is going to fit the way that it's supposed to. It'll give me a chance to see where pieces are sticking out or whatnot and correct those as well. And then what I've also done is I've marked where I want my screws to go. I've decided that I'm going to put 5 screws, so I'm going to glue everything. I'm going to glue all the panels together, but then I'm also going to put 5 screws on each side. Strategically done, because for one, we have our channel here, right? So we have our channel. I don't want to be putting a screw through the channel. I want to go just below that. This channel is going to be hidden later on, but I want to make sure that I'm at least below or above it, but I want to make sure I'm securing the bottom. So I'm just below that channel, and it shouldn't splinter off, and if it does, it won't affect it that much. So I've also went ahead and marked them the width. So what I mean by that is I want to make sure that when the screw goes in, it's going in through at least the center of this piece right here. So to do that, I just took my combination square and set that up, if I can set it up. Just took half of that, and then I just marked it all the way down. And then lastly, the spacing. So the spacings for all these on all 4 sides were 3/4 from the top and the bottom, and then from the bottom 4.5 inches up, 4.5 inches down, and then this is 20 inches, so this was 10 inches. Then the last thing I did was I used a center punch. If you have one of these, it's a great tool. It'll help the drill bit from wandering when you're going to drill a hole, because we're going to drill some pilot holes. This here being cedar, it can split, and I don't want it to do that, so I need to remove some of the material for the screw to be able to fit in. I'm going to be using deck screws, just so you know. So you take basically something like this, you find where you made your measurement, and it makes a little tiny divot inside there so the drill bit won't move around. So with that being said, I think I'm ready to go ahead and start to glue up. But before we do, I want to show you where I'm talking as far as the boards not lining up and what I'm going to do to fix those. So you can see I've got this lined up all the way across. But this panel right here, you can see that it's sticking out. Okay, we're aligned at the top, we're flush here, but we're sticking out here. So in order to compensate for that, this hole right here that we're going to drill, I'm gonna push this in first and line this up. I'm gonna put some glue on, push this in, line it up, and then make it flush, I'd say. Make it flush with this here. And then I'm gonna drill this hole. That'll hold it in place. Now when I do that, that's going to take this piece here and push it this way. That's fine, and then I'll just pull it out, drill that hole, and we're ready to go. So I'm using a countersink bit. You don't have to, you can use a regular drill bit. Just make sure that the size of the drill bit itself is smaller than the diameter of the threads. That way the threads will actually engage the wood, grab the wood. I'm going to go ahead and drill the top and the bottom. So I've made this side panel flush at the top and the bottom. I'm going to start off with those right now, at least get those lined up, and then I can bring the middle in and bring it back out. And I'm going to grab a new battery. All right, so we've put glue on both ends of this panel, of this side panel. I'm going to line up the tops and the bottoms, screw those in. Now I've brought this flush using this clamp, countersink this hole. And put the screw in. That's it. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Now if your side panel cupped the other direction, if it went this way, then you would put the center screw in first. You'd make it flush, put the center screw in first. Then bring these two outside ones in. You can pull them however you want. It shouldn't be that cupped. And then you put those two screws in. We are coming down the home stretch. Finishing the box anyway. So we need to put the bottom in, right? And we can see we oversized it intentionally. Hopefully you did it for both the top and the bottom. So you oversized your bottom. And now we're just going to make it fit. And that's what that piece was for, okay? So this piece was the same width as this here, okay? Same length, I guess. So now all we're using is to hold these two sides in place so we know the same measurement as we go in. So now it's time to cut it on down. So all we got to do is measure from here to here. I'm actually going to oversize that on my table saw. And so then we'll just kind of sneak up on this dimension. We're not worried about the length yet, just the width for now. So I'm going to sneak up on that and I'll show you what I'm doing. All right, we have a nice fit in the box. Very nice. So now we need to do this lip. So this lip here, now remember, we've got to have about 1/3 of it sticking out so that it can go into this end piece. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be this long sticking out from here. Remember, it's actually going to be just inside here because that inside piece is going to be in here, right? So we need to account for that. So the way that we did that was we did basically 3/8 inch from here, and then another 3/8 there. So we should be fine if we just go from this edge right here and trim it down about 3/8. Everything should be flush, and we shouldn't have a gap down there. And I'll show you. So we're nice and flush in here, here, top, top, and down inside. I'll spare you this part. The only thing we have to do is put the glue on each side and then secure it with the screws. All right, looking good. So the only thing that we want to finish up on the box is just a little bit, they're not flush with each other on both ends here. Yeah, that one's pretty good. And that one's maybe just a high, not a high. So we're going to take a hand plane and we're just going to plane those flat. You don't want to sand them. You want this to be a nice straight level edge, because that lid, when the lid comes down and closes on it, you don't want any gaps. So let's go ahead and get this flush with the sides. All right, you should be square. I mean, if it's off by, a 1/16 of an inch, don't sweat it. It's not gonna be that big of a deal, but you should be square all the way around. And then we're ready to move on to the lid. So I think I want to go a maximum height, being the center here, because we're going to end up going like this, and then coming down in the front. So like that, up, and then across, and then stay back down to the back. The one thing we need to make sure we accommodate is that this front piece, or I should say the back here, this back piece that's going to come up before it goes this way, needs to be able to accommodate the hinge, which is just like not even 2 inches. So it's like 1 3/4 inches. So if I go 3 inches up here, that'll give me a good amount of material. So I come up about 3 inches, come across, and then straight across. I think I'm going to try that. We do want to start out with a piece of scrap wood though, just to kind of get an idea how it's going to look. So I'm going to grab a 6-inch piece if I can't find one of those. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a scrap piece of plywood, anything. As long as it's long enough to go here to here, so it's probably 18 inches long and 6 inches high, and then we'll make it we'll get a template to see how it's going to look.